Welcome to the Merge Feast, the podcast where we satisfy your cravings for all things Survivor. We're your hosts, Sam and Mags, and this is a recap for season 45, episode 13.
The finale.
It's over. We watched it.
What a freaking fantastic end to the season.
It really was a great finale.
Yeah.
I was nervous.
Before we do the recap, I have to say, when I went to watch it last night, I watched it on YouTube TV. The icon, it was Dee wearing the individual immunity necklace.
I noticed that too. And it was also Dee and Austin holding hands. Thought that was a huge spoiler.
It was a huge spoiler, considering that after the episode had 2 immunity challenges, and when she didn't win the first one, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I have a huge spoiler that she is for sure the final 3. Yeah, and that she wins. It kind of ruined the whole thing, because I'm like, well, you know who she's going to take.
That's funny, because I forgot. As I was watching the episode, I forgot that I had seen that spoiler.
Oh, I never forget a spoiler.
Well, we start this episode a little bit differently than the other episodes.
Yeah.
We get Jeff's monologue.
Do we always get that?
No. Well, maybe on the finales. I think he's been doing that lately. He kind of talks, but not every episode, obviously.
Right. I like it.
He talks about numbers versus loyalty and how, do you go with the numbers or do you stay loyal to your relationships? And how he proposes that those things are kind of opposed to each other. When in reality, they're not. They're the same. If you want to go with your numbers, you're being loyal to your relationships. So kind of a weird monologue by Jeff here.
He's just trying to stir up emotion.
We've decided, you and I, that we're going to do today's episode a little bit differently too.
We are going to spoil it right at the beginning.
Yeah. So if you have not watched the finale and you don't want it to be spoiled, I'm sorry.
We thought it could be fun to really analyze everything that the winner did so that we can talk about all the fantastic moves and what makes that person a winner.
The winner of Survivor 45 was, of course,
Dee!
Before
we start getting into the actual recap, when Jeff is doing his monologue, he talked about getting the $1 million check. And I watch a lot of shows where money is a prize. For the first time ever, I'm thinking about getting $1 million check. And how funny is that is that literally how they give them the money? Is it a check?
Yeah, of course.
Because do you just do your mobile deposit? And then you just sit there and wait for $1 million to be deposited into your account? Do you take it into the bank? Yeah, it just seems crazy.
You take a picture of the front and the back.
Can you imagine just sitting at home on your counter, filling that out, and then you just 4 seconds later, you have $1 million in your account?
And then you get an email from the IRS a few minutes later that's like, hey, buddy, how's it going? All right. Well, after Jeff's monologue, we kind of get our recap from last episode, which, again, Austin is smitten. He's smitten with Dee. And we see Drew get blindsided again. Austin had the chance to save Drew with his amulet, but Austin played it for himself rather than putting it on Drew. And Drew goes home.
Right. Austin does say later that, of course, he was really sad about this, but in the end, that ended up being the best move for his game. And I definitely agree with that.
I disagree with that.
Oh, really?
I think he tried to spin it in front of the jury like, oh, yeah, even if I had known, I wouldn't have saved Drew. It was good for Drew to go home. But that's not true. I think he definitely would have saved Drew if he had known and had the chance.
Really?
I think he was just trying to spin it to make it seem like a positive thing for himself.
Well, I think it was great for his game. Of course, Dee going home would have been best. I've been saying that for weeks now, though, that they needed to go for each other. Nobody ever listens to me.
I always looked at it from Dee's perspective, where she could go to the end with any of those 4 and win.
Right.
But after the vote, night at the beach, Austin is the only one who was left out of that vote. So he's shocked. He puts his hands on his head and the little knot that's tied in his buff, it comes undone.
What?
Did you notice
really?
this? Yeah, because he wears his buff in that kind of signature style that we never see, the little tiny knot. Yeah, which we had one of our listeners, Iris from Orem, wrote in and said, I hate that. But that little knot came undone. But Dee is immediately on damage control mode. She is trying to repair her relationship with Austin, so she takes him out to the beach, one-on-one talk time.
Right. It was a really sweet moment in my opinion. She apologizes for blindsiding him. This is a real conversation. It's not like a Survivor conversation. She's saying, I'm sorry I lied to you yesterday. And he is so sweet and kind about it. It was like I was cupcaking just watching it. It was so cute. A super wholesome moment. He forgives her. After he forgives her, Dee's like, are you sure? Because I didn't return the trust that you gave me when you told me that we were voting for Julie. And I just thought, why is she saying that after he already forgave her?
Yeah, she's
like
rubbing it in.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you understand how badly I betrayed you. That's what she's saying.
It's like an employee telling their boss, hey, you know what? I stole 50 units of product from the warehouse. And the boss being like, okay, well, thank you for telling me it's all right. And the employee being like, are you sure? Because 50 is like a really big number.
That's right. And it was our most expensive stuff. Yeah. Austin forgives her pretty much immediately. And he's at that stage in the kind of the honeymoon stage of their relationship where he just can't stay mad at her.
I think honestly, he gets it. He knows it's a game. He's kind of separating the personal side of it from the game side of it, which is good. It was a good look on him because I think if he came back guns blazing, that would have been really unattractive.
Yeah, he's playing a different game
right
at this point.
Right.
He is playing the how do I stay together with Dee and potentially have a relationship after this is over, rather than how do I win the $1 million?
Yeah.
Which is a bummer for him and his bank account. But
right.
Who knows? Maybe it works out for him in the end.
I was going to say, it's like I said about Boston Rob a few episodes ago. Boston Rob is one of the only people in reality TV show history who has not won the money, who can actually say they got something better than the money. If he ends up marrying Dee, then he can say it was worth it.
Yeah.
So he's playing the long game. We'll see.
To be honest, marrying Dee seems like a tougher task than just trying to get the $1 million. Their relationship at this point is pretty obvious to the rest of their tribe mates. Like they've stopped trying to hide it. Katura obviously knows she was on that. She was the third wheel on their little helicopter date.
Katura says, I am disgusted I let it get this far. And I feel like she does and should shoulder most of that responsibility because she was on the reward where they were literally holding hands.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we as the viewer had hints that they were having a little showmance, but in front of everybody, besides like laughing together, they weren't doing any sort of like snuggling, holding hands. But Katura went on that reward, saw them hold hands, watched them fall in love, came back to camp and said, guess what, everybody? Let's blindside Drew.
Yeah. Nothing to see there. She just thought they were caught up in the moment. She was thinking, wow, yeah, helicopter ride would make anybody hold hands.
I have to say the editing in this episode, top notch. You know, I'm just obsessed with it this season, but Katura says they're literally attached at the hip, and then it cuts to a shot of Austin and Dee sitting hip to hip.
There were a couple moments like that in this episode that had some good jump cuts.
Yep. Austin and Dee are sitting on the beach, and he says, do you want to head back? And she says, no, I want to stay out longer, which was so cute. So they just kind of sit on the beach and chat, and it was such a sweet moment.
And Julie says, should somebody tell them none of us are going to sleep until they come back? Morning time at the Dakuwaka beach. They are immediately met with an in-camp challenge, the combination lock advantage challenge. That's what I'm calling it.
Okay. It rolls right off the tongue.
Yes, it does. Well, let's see. This is technically a challenge. Do you want to do a challenge breakdown?
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. So they have a 6-digit combination that they need to unlock. There are 3 sets of numbers that will unlock it. To identify those 3 numbers, they have to run to 3 different stations that are spread across the island. One that has coconuts, one that has bamboo, and the other that has crabs. They have to run to each, count the number of them, run to other ones, tally those ones up as well, come back and try the numbers on the combination lock. If they are incorrect, they have to run to each of the stations again before they can come back and try it.
They basically just scatter on the beach. They start running to these stations. They don't really know where the stations are, so they're kind of looking for them at first. They're on opposite sides of the beach.
Yeah.
And if you remember, this is a new beach. They had to start over. So they're not familiar with the area that much. They just got there, and they're looking for a big cage of crabs, pile of coconuts, and kind of a sculpture made out of bamboo.
Right.
Austin and Dee are working together, of course. They run off together. They get to the crabs first, and they're telling each other what they've counted. You'd think that would help them.
It did not.
Did not help them. Jake has a confessional where he says, he's not the best runner, but he can count with the best of them. He knows his strengths.
I think this was a absolutely fantastic tactic by Jake. He knew he couldn't compete in the speed aspect of it. He took the tail of the turtle and the rabbit who are racing.
The tortoise and the hare.
Oh.
The turtle and the rabbit.
Potato. Anyways, he takes that tactic of just going slow and steady. And hey, it won it for him.
It pays off. Although he does make it incredibly harder for himself than it needed to be.
When?
He talks about how he remembered the numbers.
No, that is a fantastic method.
What?
Yes, that is a memorization technique.
How is that in any way easier than just remembering the numbers?
Because you can't just remember the numbers. You're like, okay, 23, 23, 23. I'm going to remember that. Then you get up there and you're like, is it 23 or 24? You can't remember. But when you tie that number, like Jake did, he takes Gabler, who won season 43 of Survivor, and he says, okay, Gabler, he won 43. There are 43 coconuts. Gabler's a little coconutty, 43. And then that number stuck in his head.
I get how it works. I just think that remembering that JT won Survivor Tocantins in season 18, that seems way harder to me than just remembering 18.
Our minds are wired differently because just remembering a straight up number would be too confusing. I would second guess everything, but then once you've tied it to something, it sticks.
It made me laugh. It was entertaining. I thought it was funny that he was doing it that way. Impressed, actually, that he could remember the winner of every season of Survivor.
It was incredible. That memory is nuts. Talk about coconutty.
Yeah. And you've been waiting. Did you write that one down?
No, I didn't.
This episode was one of, not just the finale, but it was one of the funniest episodes of the whole season. Like, I laughed out loud several times.
I agree.
And I think that's because we got such a heavy dose of Jake.
Yep.
But this was his moment. He goes slow and steady, not in the way that Bruce tried to do it that one time a couple episodes ago.
Oh, yeah. When they were collecting the money in the little tubes around camp.
Yeah. He got more hustle than Bruce. But he just prioritized accuracy.
Right.
And it pays off for him. He's able to solve the combination lock first. Although he's not the first to attempt. Pretty much everybody attempts it before him, but they all get things wrong. And he gets the advantage, which is an advantage in the upcoming immunity challenge.
Well, I've got the immunity challenge breakdown. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready for it.
Okay, they start by crawling under a wooden obstacle and digging up a machete. They use that machete to slash a rope, which releases a pile of sandbags. From there, they toss the sandbags into 3 baskets. The baskets then reveal 3 numbers. Those numbers solve a combination lock, which releases a set of keys. After climbing a super tall tower, they will use those keys to unlock and solve a 3-tiered Survivor puzzle. I think this challenge looked like it was about as long as a football field. Not exaggerating. Would you agree?
This was a monster challenge.
Yeah, it was really big.
Huge.
It was really long and it had a ton of like physical exertion, climbing, army crawling,
and then
throwing.
Tough puzzle at the end.
Yep.
Yeah. They get the come on in from Jeff with a dose of epic music and slow-mo shots. There was extra slow-mo.
Yeah, there was.
Close-ups and things in this episode just to really get you hyped for the finale. I appreciate that. I think that was one of the most jarring aspects of season 41 was this new kind of editing style with a lot more slow-mo, a lot more like uncomfortably close-up shots.
Yes, I agree. Survivor used to never do that. When season 41 started, we got a lot of epic shots that normally would be like in a movie or a drama TV show. We used to never get really people's backstories. Now we get backstories with pictures from their childhood. I love the new change.
Yeah, it was shocking at first, but it's definitely grown on me. They can be cheesy, but sometimes that's what I want.
For sure.
This is also a reward challenge. The reward is a steak dinner with potatoes at the sanctuary.
I wondered if Jake, who seems to have Survivor history stuck in his head, I wondered if he had the same thought as I did, which was steak on Survivor is not a reward. FBI Joe would tell us otherwise.
I wrote in my notes, no, this is what took out Joe.
Yes. For those of you guys who need a little refresher, Joe went on a steak reward ate so much steak that it constipated him, couldn't poop, was miserable that he couldn't poop and had to go home.
He had to go home right at the end. He was in like final 5.
Yeah.
What season was that? We should look that up.
It definitely was like a Brains, Brawn, Beauty. He was on season 32, Brains, Brawn, Beauty.
So don't overdo it the steak. If you ever go on Survivor and you win the steak reward, go light on the steak. Eat lots of salad. Jake's advantage comes into play here as well. He has 2 of his sandbags already in the nets. So he only has to get 1 sandbag into the closest net.
Which I was wondering, did you think that was a good advantage for him?
Yeah, because we've already established he has no touch.
Right.
So great advantage for Jake in particular. They're off to the races. The first few parts of this challenge are all kind of like the digging for the machete and the cutting down the coconuts and the sandbags and all that. It's all just kind of fluff.
Yep.
You know, everybody kind of does all those things in this very close to
Right.
each other.
Julie's a little behind. She can't really dig up her machete.
Yeah, she like finds it, but she can't get it out of the sand. But they get to the sandbag throwing portion. Jake has that huge advantage. His furthest 2 nets were both already done, so he is able to get that closest one in pretty quickly. Austin is right there with him, though.
Yeah.
And Austin gets his sandbags in and is right on Jake's tail. Jake gets to the combination lock and solves it, yanks that thing out, and runs up the tall tower. What did you call it? The super tall tower.
Leaving his keys behind.
Huge mistake.
He gets all the way to the top of his tower before realizing that he left his keys and had to turn around and go back and get them, completely squashing the lead that he had.
Yep. He is now neck and neck with Austin. Austin, in fact, is a little bit ahead of Jake. Jake is watching him start to put his puzzle together. This is the puzzle that Michelle, ironically enough, I think that was the same season that Joe was taken out by the steak dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Michelle wins this challenge. Is that the same season?
Let's see. Yeah, that's the same episode. I mean, the same season.
Same season. So we have a brains versus brawn versus beauty. Basically, I want to call it a revival, a remake here with this puzzle and the danger of a steak dinner all going on. Austin is the first one to really figure this puzzle out.
So Austin and Jake have a new technique that I haven't seen before. When they're doing this puzzle, it is laid out on a circle that has like little designated spots where you're supposed to put your stack. There's probably like 6 stacks. And most people will place them in those designated spots that are probably 6 inches apart each. Jake and Austin, instead of putting them in those designated spots that are far apart, put them on their table and put them really close to each other so that you can easily see the height of all of them. Then once they're all the same, then they disperse them into their designated spot, which I think was really smart.
Yeah.
So when they're far apart like that, that's whenever you start missing heights.
Yeah, and it takes longer to move things around.
For sure.
I would just offer a caveat that I think that was Austin's strategy that Jake looked at and thought, that's a good idea. That seemed to be the whole pattern to this.
Right.
Basically, Jake was cheating off of Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So Austin was just a minute or 2 ahead of Jake, but I wasn't worried for Austin because for each level of the puzzle, Jake would just wait until Austin had it and then would copy whatever he did.
Right.
Even when they all were, both of them were on the 3rd tier of the puzzle at the same time, Jake had not shown that he was capable of doing that puzzle without seeing how somebody else had done it first.
Well, he also had another disadvantage because there was a piece of his puzzle that was off to the side, kind of hiding behind the lip, so he couldn't see it. So he was out here struggling on that last round, trying to make it work and just could not figure it out. And he didn't see that that puzzle piece was missing until after the challenge was over.
Meanwhile, Dee is still trying to throw her sandbag in the furthest net. She was making it look like that net was like 4 miles away. Did you notice that?
No, that's hilarious.
Didn't seem like anybody else had any trouble, but Dee trying to get that sandbag into the furthest net, she was like trying to throw that sandbag as far as she possibly could Took everything she had.
That is amazing.
Jake, when he finally gets his things stacked and they're all the same height, he has a great quote. He says, "Ding ding."
Jake?
Yeah. He just says ding ding. I thought that was good. Good moment to ding ding it.
So there's like that statistic about people who win the lottery that they usually end up being poorer than they were before they won the lottery after a few years. Mm-hmm. Like they blow through it. I kind of wondered if this is like the effect that winning that advantage had on Jake, where like he was so excited that he won it, and then he ended up losing more in the end. He dropped his keys. He lost that puzzle piece.
Ding ding. I think you're right. I don't know. I don't think he would have been nearly as close if not for that advantage. I think it would have taken him a lot longer to get those sandbags and the nets. He may have still taken second place, but it wouldn't have been nearly as close of a second place.
I don't know. I think he could have done it. I think the thought of having the advantage made him feel a little too comfortable. And I think that's, he forgot the key. Like he wasn't on his A game like most people are who have nothing. Austin had no advantage, obviously, and was able to pull it out.
That's true.
Like when you don't have the idea of a safety net, I think it makes you perform better.
I see what you're saying. Austin does end up winning immunity without a safety net, and he wins the reward. He channels Michelle, who also won this puzzle, and he kicks it down just like she did on her season.
And I did think this is one of the only acceptable times to kick a puzzle down.
It looked like a fun one to kick down. Jeff has to point out Jake's failure to him. He walks all the way over. Yeah. Just to tell Jake, hey, numbnuts. You got a piece. You left a piece out.
It was sad for Jake.
Yeah, it was sad for Jake. Poor Jake is frustrated. This is another comedy moment while Jeff's talking to Austin about his victory. Jake's holding that piece and he flips it up in the air and tries to catch it and he drops it.
This gives off the same vibe to me like when you're watching a basketball game, and forgive me for not knowing the basketball lingo, but the ref blows his whistle to pause the game because something's gone amiss, and the person who was about to shoot the ball still shoots the ball and then misses.
And that's embarrassing.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is a little embarrassing. Austin has the opportunity to choose one person to go eat steak with. He chooses Jake.
I was so happy he chose Jake.
Yeah, Jake deserved it. Also, Austin couldn't risk knocking Dee out due to constipation. So he had to choose someone who was expendable.
Right.
That was Jake. Jake is thrilled. After the challenge, we go back to the Dakuwaka beach. We get a little bit of pinging around between the beach and the sanctuary and back to the beach. But at the beach, Julie is still trying to cut Jake out.
Julie says to Katura that she wants Jake gone because she doesn't trust him. I'm over here thinking, sis, that part of the game is over. You don't need to build trust with Jake anymore. But you just need to start thinking, who can I beat in 2 days at Final 3?
Very true.
And then she says in her confessional, here's a direct quote, "The jury wants to see me as mom with a loyal relationship, so I can't vote out D." I just knew that was not true. I've seen enough final tribal council jury questions for me to know that somebody was going to ask her the opposite. Julie, you've been out here pretending to be Mama J. Tell me one time whenever you went against that instinct and actually played a cutthroat game.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like something someone would say. Julie is just lost in terms of her force, like what her Final 3 looks like.
Right.
Because you're exactly right. Her whole game has been do whatever D tells her to do. And so when she gets to the end, she can say, yeah, I was mom and I was loyal to D. And then D says, yeah, she was loyal to me. She did whatever I said. And everybody says, okay, we're going to vote for D. I mean, that's it.
Right.
That sums up how that for Final Tribal would go. D is worried about Jake because he's an attorney. I don't want to go up against a lawyer. And she confides that to Julie and Katura, who are both secret lawyers.
Amazing.
Pretty good.
Thus solidifying to Katura and Julie that they made the right move, not telling that they were lawyers.
It's a theme. This whole episode, being a lawyer is a
Strong
major topic.
theme.
Yeah.
At the reward, they are sharing their meal together and they cheers their glass of wine. Now, I do not fancy myself a wine drinker, but I know that whenever you see a glass of wine, it's usually only like 1/3 full.
Mm-hmm.
But these wine glasses were filled nearly to the brim. I'd never seen a wine glass so full.
In your whole life?
In my whole life. I don't think it's supposed to be like that. It looked unnatural.
There's no space to swirl.
And believe it or not, it gets worse than that. Because Jake just up and tells Austin about his idol. Why did he do that?
Jake he's a comedy of errors.
Honestly.
To quote Shakespeare. Why would he tell Austin about the idol? And why in the world is he still trying to get Julie out?
Honestly, he's got the same problem Julie does, which is, look at your targets. Who can't you beat?
Look around.
Open your eyes.
Open your eyes. Finally, they go back to the Dakawaka beach and connect back up. All 5 are on the beach. And this is when the chaos erupts.
We get another one of my most favorite editing techniques here.
The jump cut.
The jump cut.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the scene on Disney Cars where...
Disney Cars?
What did I call it?
Disney Cars.
Yeah. What was I supposed to call it?
Cars.
Well, do you think everybody knows? Anyways, Lightning McQueen is supposed to be headed back onto his trailer, and he looks for his trailer, and he's like, hey, where is it? And Mac says, I parked it over at your sponsor's tent. Lightning McQueen goes, no. And it cuts to the ad of him for his sponsor saying, yes. The exact same thing happens here. Jake is walking on the beach with Austin. He says, hey, don't tell anyone about my idol. Austin says, sure thing, man. Cut to Dee and Austin. Austin says, Jake has an idol.
This chaos that happens on the beach is entertaining, but it is pretty much a microcosm of how the whole season has gone.
I would totally agree with that.
There's not much strategizing, to use a scientific term. The strategy is all over the place, and nobody is thinking outside of, what do I want?
Yes. Finally, Katura sees a little bit of light. And she says, hey, whoa, I think Dee is a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Maybe I should try and do something to get Dee out.
And she goes to Jake. She convinces Jake. She convinces him to vote out Dee.
Begs him.
Makes him swear on his Nana. All right?
She says, pick whatever's most important to you. Swear on that.
Says, all right, my Nana. And then she says, say the whole thing.
Yeah.
I swear on my Nana
that I am voting for Dee.
Voting for Dee.
Meanwhile, Julie knows that Jake has an idol, and she says, you know what? I'm going to vote for Jake anyways and hope the idol is fake. What? What sort of stupid gameplay is this?
What is happening?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Don't split the vote. Everybody just pile your votes on Jake when Austin has literally seen the idol. They know he has it.
I think he's lying.
What sort of gameplay is that? Like, why wouldn't Julie just say, all right, let's get Katura then. She's expendable.
This is wild. Okay, so you have a plan put in play by 2 people, 2 of the 5. Right, so you have Katura and Jake have this plan to vote out Dee. They only have 2 of them. There are 3 of the opposition in an alliance. The Reba 3. Julie, who's just decided she's going to vote Jake no matter what. Who cares what anybody else says or does? If he plays his idol, it's fake. Guess what, Julie? If nobody else votes for Jake and his idol is fake, he's still not going home.
Yeah.
Okay? Your vote
that is
Jake
a throwaway vote.
Meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. Doesn't matter if it's real or not if nobody is going to vote for him. If you're the only person who votes for Jake, it's all over for you. All right. Then we have Dee and Austin. Dee says, I'm not voting for Julie. I'm voting for Katura. No matter what.
Right.
Austin is like, Maybe I'll vote for Julie. I don't know. Sure. Why not? I don't know if anybody else is. I mean, they've told me they are, so I guess that means it must be. Jake has an idol, so he's definitely not going to try and pull anything with that. Ironically, Dee's voting for Keturah no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Julie's voting for Jake no matter what. For no reason. Jake and Keturah have a plan to vote out Dee.
Right.
But there's still only 2 votes.
Mm-hmm.
All Austin has to do is put his vote on Keturah also, and that protects Dee.
Right.
Right? That protects both Dee and Julie, in fact.
Right.
If Austin is under the impression that Keturah and Jake are going to vote for Julie with him, he still might as well throw his vote on Keturah.
Sure.
And then it's 2 votes on Julie, 2 votes on Keturah, 1 vote on Jake. And there's a revote, and Austin can flip his vote to Julie at that point.
Right.
And vote Julie out.
Mm-hmm.
But by voting for Keturah, he's protecting Dee.
We get a misspoken phrase here.
Oh, we love those.
Keturah says in her confessional right before heading to tribal council, "I'm a little bit nervous that my name is on the block." I believe the phrase is, "My name is on the chopping block."
Yeah, I'll give it to her.
What? When you say it like that, it's just like the word on the block. It's like changed into like a neighborhood feel.
Jenny on the block.
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know what that is, but...
J-Lo. Jennifer Lopez.
Why'd you say Jenny on the block?
Isn't that a song?
Alexa, play Jenny on the Block.
Jenny from the Block, Bronx remix by Jennifer Lopez.
Jenny from the block. All right.
All right, I stand corrected.
Alexa, stop.
But my point is made. When Jennifer Lopez wrote that song, she wasn't saying Jenny's name is on the chopping block.
They go to tribal council. 1 of 3.
Well, they all do their small talk like they do.
Mm-hmm.
They go place their votes. They get back. Jeff says, would anybody like to play any advantages or hidden immunity idols? And Jake says, Jeff, have you heard my Tony? Why can't I do a Boston accent anymore?
Anymore.
What are you? You don't think it was good at the beginning of the season? Rude. Anyways, Jake basically says, "Oi, Jeff, have you heard my impression?" Anyways, he says, "Have you heard my impression of Tony?" Jeff says, "No, I haven't." So he goes up there and gives him his idol, does his impression of Tony, saying, "Can you verify this for me?" He plays the idol for Keturah. Keturah is shook.
She's thrilled.
They read the first vote and it says Keturah. And Jake just goes, "Yes!" with, like the arm.
The fist pump.
Fist pump. He's so excited.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next vote is for Jake. Jake just goes, "Ah,
The votes start to roll in all over the place, of course. We get the first one for Keturah, second one for Jake, third one for Dee, and then we get the Julie vote.
Right.
And the next vote comes in. It's the last vote. Julie.
Keturah panicked and switched her vote to Julie.
Julie gets up to leave to get her torch snuffed, and she stands up. She gives Keturah a hug and says, "Hey, I'm going to tell you something," and whispers in her ear, "You should go to law school." Completely rocks Keturah's world.
Right.
Because neither of them know that the other is a lawyer.
Right.
And it probably came out of left field. It wasn't like Jake was telling her, because
Right.
I assume that Keturah has talked with Jake about potentially...
Yeah, maybe I'm interested in that.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like Julie and Keturah had ever said that.
Right.
So Julie and Keturah have... I thought that was a cool moment.
It was great. It really shows that Julie she is like a mom figure to these guys. She knows their personalities and their strengths, which I think is sweet. They get back to camp. They're kind of sitting around in a circle, and Jake looks to Keturah and thinks, this is as good a place as any to air out my dirty laundry.
Yeah. He confronts her. Well, Jake really, he's like Owen. Do you remember Owen from a few seasons ago?
I loved Owen.
Who always said he was Charlie Brown,
Mm-hmm.
where people kept teeing the football up for him to kick, and Lucy would just yank it away at the last second. That's Jake.
It's Jake.
To a T. They are twins in that way, where every time Jake has tried to make a move, Keturah now twice. This is the second time she has ruined one of his well laid out plans that would have worked.
Yep. Katurah tries to turn her out on him, like, you need some accountability. I didn't make you do anything. Jake and Katurah are both kind of tattling to Austin and Dee, trying to stay in their good graces.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, in the end, I just didn't trust Jake. And I'm just over here, like, screaming to my TV, like, then why did you go to him in the first place? You went to him. He didn't come to you and beg you to do something, and then you got scared. You went to him. You begged him to switch his vote, and then you got scared.
Mm-hmm. And Katurah seals her own fate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seals everybody's fate. That was her and Jake's last chance to make a big move. I mean, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Her changing her vote at the last second because she was scared just basically waved the white flag.
Yes.
Because she had couldn't risk going home and would rather go to the end with no big moves.
Right.
That's what she decided.
And I really think that this probably keeps Katurah up at night because
I hope so.
had she voted for Dee, Dee would have been gotten out.
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say what would have happened after that? Because Dee's the one who won the final immunity challenge. She's the one who got to decide who got to make fire and who she brought with her. And she's the one who made it to final tribal and won. So obviously you take Dee out of that equation, things are so shaken up.
Yeah.
That I'm sure that Katurah has replayed that in her mind and thought that over probably about 1,000,000 times.
She gets Dee out right there. They're looking at potentially a Katurah, Jake, Julie final three.
And that's a totally different game.
Mm-hmm. Totally different. Mm-hmm. And she has a big move on her resume.
Right. She got Dee out.
Yep.
Plus, then she can reveal that she's a lawyer. Everybody loves a big surprise reveal at Final Tribal.
And for some reason, everybody loves lawyers in this season. We go to the final immunity challenge. Anything to touch on before we get to the final immunity challenge?
No, let's take a quick break and I'll give you a recap when we get back.
Christmas is now less than a week away, but it's not too late to head over to Jancy & Co. to snag some of those great holiday deals for that special someone in your life. Macrame, embroideries, weavings, Jancy & Co. is here to make the perfect alliance with your holiday shopping need. For a limited time, save 26% with code HOLIDAYMERGE at Jancy & Co. on Etsy and at jancyand.com.
This code is not going to last for very much longer. I would hurry up and use it before it expires.
Okay, let's get to our challenge breakdown.
For this challenge, they are going to maneuver through a grid of ropes while using a long fork-type thingy to hold a bowl and place it at the end of a small perch that is connected to the rope grid. Once they set down one bowl, they have to go back through the grid to get another. First to finish wins immunity.
Pretty painstaking challenge here.
Yeah.
I thought when they were showing the preview, and Jeff is explaining the challenge and they show the previews, you know, they have the dream team interns running the challenge so you can see someone doing it.
Right.
When they show the person tripping and knocking all of the stack of bowls over, super believable trip by that dream team intern. I thought they did a great job.
You think it was fake?
They must have been fake. They get started and they are off to the races. Austin goes just booking it through that rope grid. High knees.
It becomes apparent that this is not Austin's challenge.
Mm-hmm.
He's almost like a bull in a china shop.
A bowl or a bowl?
A bull.
A bowl?
Say it the other way.
A bowl?
What did I say?
A bowl?
A bull.
A bowl. They're stacking bowls, so I didn't want to get mixed up with a bowl in a china shop.
Oh, now that's
bowl
tricky.
stacking bowls, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Austin was like a BULL in a china shop.
He is trying to get through the rope grid. He's going too fast. He's got no chill, which is his problem here. He is the first person I've ever seen in this challenge knock over one bowl. He puts it on there and he loses it going back to get his second. Not great. Really, it becomes pretty apparent pretty early that this challenge is going to be between Dee and Jake.
Right. So this seems like a type of challenge that being tall would be a huge advantage.
Really?
Yeah. Tell me if you think this is right, because you don't have to lift your legs as high to get through the rope grid. And when you're stacking your bowls, as it gets higher, you'll notice that like Dee is holding that fork thing like above her head trying to get it on top. Do you know what I mean? That it seems like this might be great to be tall. You don't have to lift your legs as high going through the rope grid, and you have more of a bird's eye view when you're stacking the bowls.
I can see that. I think the disadvantages to being taller is usually that means you're bigger. So you'll have bigger feet and like, bigger legs to try and avoid touching the rope grid with.
Right.
So I think it probably ends up evening out.
Right.
But at the end, it could be a big advantage, to stack
Yes.
those last couple of bowls.
Well, shout out to Spellman on TikTok who commented at us and was excited to hear what we thought about Jake breaking the challenge.
Yeah, and we don't mean with a life hack. You know how they say that.
What, they say breaking for a hack?
Yeah, like he broke the challenge. Like he figured out a life hack around it.
He literally broke this challenge. This gave me the vibes of a toddler and a parent. Jeff says to Jake, setting clear expectations and boundaries like a parent should. If you break that challenge, you are out. Jake, like a toddler, ignores him and stomps all over this precious item that Jeff had handcrafted just for him.
Well, to give some context, Jake had just knocked over. He was at 13 of 17 bowls.
Right.
He had a large stack and was
Crushed
close behind
that it
D
fell.
In second place, and he knocks it all over.
Yeah.
It broke him as a man.
So he's trying to go back. So instead of stepping through the rope grid, he just decides, I'm going to step on the rope grid.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff sets his boundary. Jake ignores it. And then Jeff says, okay, you made your choice. You broke it. You're out of the game. And then Jake is like, no! Ah!
Gotta be kidding me,
You gotta
man.
be kidding me, man. Runs off to the side, has a little pity party. And it's just like, he must not have heard Jeff say that. Like, that was such a big reaction. But it's like, you literally did the thing that he said. If you do this, then you're out.
Mm-hmm. Jake, he lost it.
He lost it.
Everything.
Mm-hmm. His pride,
mind,
his chance at winning.
his dignity. Yeah, everything. He was, I think he felt like he had a shot at doing something. Like this was going to be his crowning achievement,
Right.
was winning immunity to get into the final three. And he knocks over all his bowls and just wants it to end.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted it to be over. I think when Jeff said, if you break that challenge, you're out, Jake was thinking, I kind of hope something happens to me,
Yeah.
you know?
Put me out of my misery.
Exactly. It's D's to lose at that point.
Yep.
She just has to stack the last 4 bowls. No one's even close to her. Austin keeps knocking his over. Katura is doing a good job of not knocking them over, but unfortunately, she's incredibly slow. D is able to pull it out. She takes breaks. She tells herself to stay calm
Right.
out loud
Mm-hmm.
and is able to get that last one stacked on there and win the final immunity challenge and punch her ticket to the final 3.
Mm-hmm. It was awesome. She shares a really tender hug with Jeff. I was so happy for Dee in this moment. It was hard to not feel like a little emotional.
It did feel like the win sealing move for D to me. I thought as soon as she won this, I thought there's no way any of these other 3 can make a case
Right.
that they played a better game than
Yep.
D. I just don't see it.
Direct quote from Jeff, there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's one thing we know for sure. Dee is in charge. And I'm thinking, yeah, Jeff, we've known that for a long time now.
Yeah, she's the unstoppable
She's
force.
literally been in charge this whole game.
She has been telling everyone what to do for 12 weeks now.
We get a confessional of Jake as they are coming back to camp.
He's frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
He says he's got a snowball's chance in hell.
Uh-huh.
But, he's not going to give up. He's going to keep going. But he just wishes he was a bigger snowball.
He says, I just wish I was the biggest snowball, but I got to work with what I got. Jake has had some crazy sayings this season that I've never heard of. But just like all the other ones, I looked this one up, and a snowball's chance in hell is a real saying.
Oh, yeah, I know this one.
I've never heard it before.
He's a broken man back at the beach. I mean, he's been struggling, and you could just tell in all his conversations with the other players, with the producers, like, he's not giving himself any credit for his attempts.
No, he's not.
He is just...
He's just feeling like beaten down.
Yeah, I mean, you can only fail so many times, and he's failed a lot.
Right.
And it's hard because, like, he found an idol. He's like planned several moves that would have worked if it weren't for other people
Right.
making mistakes, basically, namely Keturah,
Yep.
but other people too. You know, his whole Bellow tribe. If Jake had been on the Reba tribe to start instead of Sifu, for
Right.
example, if they switch tribes, Jake has a way better chance in this thing.
It's true. Jake talks to Keturah and kind of tearfully says, "Please let me make fire. I need this."
Yes.
Which is very admirable.
Yes. I don't know what it is about a grown adult looking at another grown adult and tearfully saying, "Please, I need this." But it makes me uncomfortable. Have a little dignity, all right?
Couldn't be worse than what does Michael Scott say, "Please, I need this too."
He's trying to pin Kevin down on his lap.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it couldn't be worse than that.
Or maybe it's Ryan. I think it's Ryan.
Yeah,
He's
definitely
trying to-
Ryan.
Basically, Dee decides before they get to tribal council that she's going to put Jake and Keturah in the fire making. Austin tries to convince Dee to put him in the fire making because he wants that on his resume. He wants that little extra thing to push him over the top. Dee is not going to have that. Smartly. She knows that she and Austin are close. She knows she has the upper hand. I feel like she has a really good grasp on where the jury is. And she knows she's got the upper hand on Austin, but putting him in the fire making challenge makes them closer and potentially gives him a slight advantage
Right.
in terms of their resumes. So she's determined to bring Austin to the final three with her, make Jake and Keturah
Battle
duel.
it out. Keturah now knows that she is officially going to have to make fire. And so she has her little pity party in her confessional where she's crying and just says she doesn't know if she can do it. And then she gets her third person confessional where her confidence gets built and she says, "I am Keturah. And what if Keturah pulled this out and beat Jake?" And I just knew then, all right, at least she's had some confidence in her. When they start speaking in third person, at least they're feeling good.
The third person always is a good sign. That's right.
I've also got another quote here from Jake.
All right.
He's talking about building his fire, and he says, "I'm going to put every last bit I got into the tank and then throw the tank in with it."
That would actually help his fire making.
Yeah. Then get a really tender moment, one of my favorite scenes on Survivor that has played out a few times, where somebody who knows how to make fire goes and teaches the person who doesn't know how to make fire how to build a proper one. Austin approaches Jake, who is struggling in the little jungle part of the island, kind of failing at his fire, and he teaches him how to build a great base and to get that fire going. Reminds me of Carson and Jam Jam from last season. Carson was struggling at crying, and it was like reminding him of kind of his personal shortcomings, and Jam Jam, even though he was going to be competing against Carson, just put that aside and thought, you know what, like, this is a kid who needs help, and I'm going to help him. It's always such a cute moment.
Every season, this kind of sparks a debate as to whether or not the Final Four should be a fire-making challenge or if it should be a vote. And there are a lot of passionate people who feel that it should be a vote at Final Four. I know we talked about this a little bit. I actually really like the fire-making challenge at Final Four.
I do too, for multiple reasons. Let's hear yours.
First of all, it's not the only way to get into the final three.
Mm-hmm.
There are three ways. Number one is to be good at challenges and to win the final immunity challenge. That's the best way, right? That guarantees you that, and it gives you more power in choosing who gets to the final three.
Right.
Number two is to have a great social game and be taken to the final three by the person who wins immunity at the final four. That is just as valid a way, in my opinion, to get taken to the final three. If you can convince that person to bring you, that's great.
Right.
Number three, learn how to make fire. You're out there for 29 days or whatever it is, 27 days. Just learn how to make fire. Practice every single day.
Yep.
This game started 20 plus years ago as a survival game. The surviving part was a huge part of it. Building a shelter, finding food. All that was a major part of it. Now it's not so much.
Right.
Now it's much more of a social game. This is one way that Survivor can hold on to that survivor part of the show.
What's interesting is that probably unknowingly you touched on the 3 pillars of Survivor. The first, winning challenges, which is to outplay. Then on your social game, which could be to outwit. And then on winning or on being able to actually build a fire and Survivor in the wilderness, which would be outlast.
Yeah.
So yeah, you demonstrate one of those things, you can be brought in. The thing that I love about the fire making challenge, it's just for the pure entertainment standpoint, keeps you on the edge of my seat. It's the most intense part of Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing being, this is how somebody who is actually a fantastic player can weasel their way in to the final 3.
Yep.
Take Rick Devens, for example. It gives them a shot, at least, where if they were just to vote, everybody would have just voted him out.
Yep.
But this at least gives a shot for that good player to make it into Final 4, to make it into Final 3, almost like the shot in the dark.
Yeah.
It just is a way to help the good players not be penalized for being good.
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's much better than having a 2-2 tie, which is usually what happens in the Final 4.
Right.
Unless there's one strong, overwhelming contender in the Final 4 that it would be a rare 3-1 vote. It's usually a 2-2 tie between 2 alliances, and you end up having to draw rocks or something like that.
Yep.
Which is not nearly as fun. Where usually in a tie, they actually do the fire making challenge anyway.
Right. Well, let's head to the Tribal Council.
Tribal Council number 2. They start off by Keturah telling everybody what Dee told her, which was... She doesn't mention that Dee would be making her make fire, but she does talk all about how Dee said she was a threat and didn't feel comfortable sitting next to her at the final tribal and all blah, blah, blah.
She says, I did secret moves that I didn't let anybody else see, so this made me know that you guys can actually see that, like, I'm a good player and you saw my secret moves.
Yeah, they're so secret that nobody knows about them.
The faces of the jury when Keturah said that, like, she was a good player told me everything I needed to know.
Emily saw right through that BS.
Bruce was like, what?
Emily made me laugh. Emily really stole the show here in the last 45 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, she's a star.
She was awesome. I missed her. Usually in these final, the final 4 tribal councils, we watch a contender building fire against somebody. Mm-hmm. And this was an interesting change where we got to watch 2 losers.
So the fire making challenge is that they each get a little station and they have a kit which has all the materials you'd need to build a fire. Mm-hmm. The rules are pretty simple. The first person to build a fire that is hot enough and high enough to burn through the rope that is suspended over the top wins the 3rd seat at the final tribal council.
Once they burn through the rope, it raises a little flag.
Yep.
Very fun little contraption.
I have got a little breakdown here of how this goes.
Give us the breakdown. Starts
off strong. Jake sets up his fire the way Austin taught him to. Aww.
Aww.
Keturah also sets hers up. Don't know who taught her that method. Jake gets fire first. Keturah gets a flame, loses it. Jake's flame burns higher. Keturah, lots of sparks, no flames. Jake, fire grows stronger. Keturah gets a little flame. Once again, it goes out. Jake, his rope starts to burn. Keturah continues to work. Jake's fire burns the rope, and he earns the final seat at Tribal. Tells Keturah she'd be an amazing lawyer.
You could tell that Keturah was way more annoyed that Jake told her she would be an amazing lawyer than when Julie said it.
Yeah.
When Julie said it, it meant something to her.
Yes.
When Jake said it, she was like, okay, yeah, I know.
It's so true.
Jake gets hit again with, right at the end, he tells Keturah, I love you, Keturah. And Keturah says, I love you guys. Second episode in a row where Jake has been...
This is so sad for Jake.
Nobody can respond to him directly.
Jake's final and last weird phrase comes out where he talks about his dream and of being on Survivor, and he always thought it was pie in the sky. I had also never heard that one.
Yeah, pie in the sky. I've heard that one too.
I haven't.
It's like a dream that's unachievable.
Mm-hmm. This was such a great moment for Jake. He's emotional. You could just feel it.
Yeah. No, definitely.
He said it's one of the best moments of his life.
His first W of the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's had a lot of W's for the audience. He's been very enjoyable to watch.
For sure.
But in terms of as a player, this is his first good thing to happen to him.
Right.
If nothing else, that was what this fire making challenge was for, was to validate Jake's journey. Final beach day. The final three, we have Jake, Dee, and Austin. They start talking about the jury, and we get some slow-mo jury headshots of them peering into our souls.
This actually reminded me of when you go to a sports game. You know, on like the Jumbotron before the game starts, they'll like play like a hype video of the team, and it'll show them like, you know, like palming a basketball and holding it out to the camera, looking extra tough. That was the vibes this was giving me.
That was exactly right. Yeah, expecting some flames to shoot out. Yeah, it's always hard not to skip through it, but
I did. I did skip through it.
I watched it for educational purposes, and first you get the final three kind of in their confessionals talking about why they think they should win the $1 million and what they're preparing to tell the jury. And then they talk about each member of the jury, kind of give a recap of the jury members' games. Almost like an in memoriam type situation. The funniest of all of these, well, I wouldn't know about Caleb's because I got a random commercial for a Hyundai car dealership in Kentucky that came on and blocked out Caleb's entire segment.
Sad.
So I don't know what happened there, but Jake has his confessional where he seems to be deluding himself into thinking he's maybe got a chance. Like he's hyping himself up, saying the other two played safe games, but he didn't play a safe game. I think he's confusing the word safe with smart. The other two played smart games, and Jake didn't play such a smart game. I think is maybe a better one, but at least I thought that's good for him. It's better to go in thinking you've got a chance than to have already consigned yourself to defeat. Well, if you skip through this part, should we just skip through it as well?
Absolutely, we should.
Okay. We get to final tribal.
I took the liberty of writing down each of the jury's questions.
Okay.
I thought I could just read them off, and if you have something to note of their answers or anything else, we can stop.
Yes.
Okay, first we have Kendra. She addresses all three and says, how did you take Survivor by the horns? Like, how did you take this game and not waste a single second?
Yeah.
Anything to note?
How did you yellow it up? That's what she was asking.
I think this was a great question for Jake because he has maintained that taking Survivor by the horns. He's always been like, oh, I'm sad, but at least I'm on Survivor. You know, like he's always spun it to be happy and like to just be like having a good time.
Yeah, I thought this was a funny question to come from Kendra.
Because she didn't take Survivor by the horns?
She couldn't even eat the worm. She just put it in her mouth and swished it around a little bit.
And I also liked Austin's answer, which was that he reveals that he was an alternate for the show.
Oh, yeah, this was good to know.
Yeah, which you didn't know that. And so basically he said that gave him a new lease on life. Like he felt like he was living on borrowed time. He came out there and just was happy to be there. And you could also see that in his game. On to Katura's question, where she asks, what were moments you had in this game that terrified you? Really great answer by Jake, where he says that he tackled his fear. Wow. He says he tackled his fear of failure in a really emotional story, which was awesome. At this point, I'm thinking, wow, Jake is a star.
I agree. I put in my note, if Jake wins this will be the greatest fumble of the bag in Survivor history. If he can steal this one away from Dee or Austin.
Honestly.
He was looking good those first two questions. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were tailor-made for him.
Honestly.
Once we started talking about the brass tacks, getting to actual strategy, things took a turn for the worse.
Wow, I am just on one today. Drew's question was for Dee and Austin. What did you bring to the Reba 4 alliance that made it successful? And this really pit Dee and Austin against each other.
Yeah, thank goodness. I thought Dee needed this, but she doesn't handle it great at the beginning.
Mm-mm.
Like Dee needed the head-to-head to show where she differentiated herself from Austin.
Right.
And because Austin had a lot of the public moves, right? Like he had the amulet, he had the idol, but Dee was really the one who was headstrong enough to dictate the moves.
Absolutely.
And she was the only one at the end between her and Austin who was willing to withhold information from the other.
Right.
For her own benefit.
Exactly.
She doesn't bring up any of that.
No, and she should have. You're right.
She dances around it and continually says things like, I just played with my heart and I was just my authentic self. Emily asks her, sorry, I'm skipping ahead to
That's
Emily's
okay.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Emily asks her, tell me specifically like a move that you made that was with your head and not your heart.
Yeah, her question exactly is, tell me one time you made a choice with your brain, not your heart. Do you have one of those?
And Dee says no, which I get what she's getting at. She's not apologizing for playing with her heart, which is fine. But you can say, I made strategic moves with my heart.
Boom, baby.
Like, you don't have to say, I didn't make strategic moves.
Yeah.
Like, you say, I made like head moves, but together with my emotions.
Or better yet, just say what you said. I made most of my moves with my heart strategically. During whatever vote, during the last vote with Drew, my heart wanted to tell Austin, but strategically, I knew that wasn't the right move. I withheld that information.
So good. That would have been great. She almost doesn't say that move. That's her best move of the whole game.
Yeah, it was.
And she almost didn't say it.
Yeah, she kind of just like glides right over it. Well, Caleb's question is directed towards Jake. He says, what did you do that I couldn't? Basically asking him, like, how did you stay here this whole time?
And Jake says, well, I wasn't as likable as you. I wasn't as good at the game as you were, so people just kept me around.
Drew asks Jake, was there a method to your madness? Jake says, I don't think Dee and Austin tried to make smart moves, which earned a face from Dee, but I somewhat agree with Jake. I don't want to say that like they didn't make smart moves, because the thing is that they were in such a power position that they didn't have to make moves.
Mm-hmm. Both Austin and Dee bring this out that they were so insulated, and that was their goal. That's what they wanted to be, and I think that's the perfect word to describe their strategy this whole season is insulate themselves so that like both of them had 2 number ones.
Exactly.
It's way hard for anybody to get 1 number 1.
Yeah.
And somehow in the same season, 2 of the top 3 had 2 number 1s.
It was crazy.
Like, how does that even... the math doesn't compute on that. You can't have 2 number 1s.
The math ain't mathin'. Kelly asks Austin, what was the execution of the advantages you found? Austin says that there's some flash to having an idol, but not actually playing it.
That's what you said.
I definitely agree with.
Yeah, you said that last week.
And Dee interrupts him and says that knowing all the information like she did was even more important than having an idol in her pocket. And it's true. Having that information served her more than either of those idols served Austin.
Austin kind of justifies not playing his idol on Drew as saying it was better for him, but really it was not.
Right.
Like, obviously he would have rather Julie go home than Drew.
Yeah. Katura asks Jake, why did you play an idol on me and not tell me the plan? This was a great moment for Jake to shine, which instead of shining, he stayed matte.
He buries himself into the sand. Yeah.
I think the appropriate answer here would have been...
Stays matte.
I think what he should have said was, well, I have seen time and time again in Survivor history and in this season that when you have an idol and you say, I'll play it for you, that person turns around to everybody else and says, they're going to play an idol on me. Let's get them out. That way we flush the idol and we get them out.
Yep.
So strategically, I decided not to tell you, but we did basically do a blood oath over my Nana's grave that we were going to vote together.
We made the unbreakable vow. Yeah, instead he just says, I thought it would look cooler.
Yeah, he said I wanted to look flashy. Julie has a question for Dee and Austin. She says, I would like to know more about your showmance. Best question ever. Dee had a great answer because Julie expands a little bit more and says, I want to know, was it strategic or was it real? At first, it was strategic, and from there, it was just natural.
Yeah. Austin backs that up and says, around day 20 or so, just felt like something had changed. Something was different, There was a sparkle in Dee's eye he hadn't noticed before.
This is where Dee exposes herself about lying to Austin and keeping Julie.
Yeah, because, Austin says he didn't let that affect his strategic game. He had his relationship with Dee, but that didn't affect, his strategy. He was able to keep them separate. Emily uses her patented phrase, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. She did a lot of pushing back. She said, when I got voted out, it was because you told Dee and Dee told Julie.
Right.
So why did you tell Dee? The whole plan was to nobody tell Dee.
Right.
And Austin's like, yeah, I told Dee, but Dee didn't tell anybody. And this was a great, finally, Emily teed it up really well for Dee.
Yep.
To say, you didn't know this, but I did lie to you in front of the jury.
Yep.
She says that to Austin. I did tell Julie. I told Julie to play her idol, and I demanded that Julie vote out Emily to protect my number in Austin because Julie wanted to vote you out. Just thank goodness she said it.
Yep.
I was so worried she wasn't going to say it.
I know, because that was a huge move.
Mm-hmm.
And even while she was talking about how she played Austin like a fool, Austin is looking at her in the cutest way I've ever seen. He's proud of her, in love with her. It was all the feels in that moment.
Yeah, he just was realizing he got played.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Those are all the questions. Do you have anything else to say before we move on to the final vote?
I don't think so. I made my prediction that I think Dee had won it with that final expose on Austin.
Nice prediction.
They show a couple of the votes. They show Kendra voting for Austin. When Emily votes, they show her voting for Dee. And she has one of the most legendary clips where she says, did you watch this part?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, she says, if you spend 1 cent of that million on that boy, I will come down to Miami and personally take it from you. So great. So great. Can't even take him to dinner. Sorry, Austin.
Jeff is reading the votes, and I honestly hate that moment when you realize that one of the people
isn't going to get any votes.
Exactly. Especially when that person is Carolyn, Jake, etc. It's really sad.
I want to say he deserved a vote. He didn't really deserve a vote, but he was such a great character.
Mm-hmm.
He was such a great contestant to watch.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I feel like he deserved a
Yes.
vote. He gets the viewership vote. I think.
Right.
I thought it was going to be a tie.
I thought it was too.
I thought there was a good chance.
I kind of wanted it to be a tie.
Yeah, me too.
I wanted Dee to pull through in the end, but I still thought a tie could have been really fun to watch. I'm really happy with the way the votes shook out. Ended up being Dee just had one more vote than Austin. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that. I'm glad it wasn't blown out of the water, because I think that Austin played a fantastic game. And I think he could have maybe spun it to win if he had talked a little bit differently. I do think Dee had a better game. So I really liked the way that it all worked out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Dee played a dominant game.
Mm-hmm.
She never bended her will to anyone, really.
No.
And she just waltzed through the game how she wanted to play it. And her not only getting 5 of the 8 votes is not an indictment on her game. It just goes to show how strong of a game Austin also played.
Yep.
And it's no coincidence that they were attached to the hip.
Right.
Because they needed each other in a lot of key moments in the game.
Totally. Now, here's my question is, how do you keep the power dynamic from shifting when your girlfriend suddenly wins $1 million?
Yeah.
Because that
tough.
dynamic has to be kind of awkward now, right?
That's tough. You're going to have to, especially when it came with the condition of not being able to spend a cent on him.
Because
that is rough.
We have since confirmed that Austin and Dee are still together and doing a little bit of long distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's crazy because they live in different states, so I assume they're flying back and forth to see each other. And if I were Austin, it would just be kind of hard being like, I have to use my measly $200 that I own to buy my ticket to come see you. Can't you just pay for me to come out there? You're a millionaire.
Yeah, she's going to spend the whole $1 million on their long distance relationship.
I just wonder how that dynamic shifts, Thank goodness Austin had already had the interest in her before she was a millionaire.
Exactly. He's not a gold digger.
Yeah.
Maybe he just knew that she was going to win. So that was his plan all along. Our mailbag question last week was, we just wanted to hear everybody's predictions for who is going to win. We got some good ones. We have from Micah in Belgium. He says, I think Dee's going to win because she'll tell Austin she loves him and that Drew was coming in between them. Then he'll forgive her and she'll kiss him when she sends him to the jury to vote for her. That would be an epic send-off if she had blindsided him or sent him to the fire-making challenge or voted him out of Final Five or something. That would have been awesome. Maddie in Draper, Utah said, okay, I 100% want Dee to win and have from like episode 3, but I already know that the people I want to win never win on this show, which is my number one pet peeve about Survivor. Well, look at that. Congrats, Maddie. I feel like the people that win are always the people that don't deserve it because the greatest players always get voted out before getting to the final 3. So I honestly feel like Keturah is going to win because they're going to drag her to the end with them, thinking she isn't a threat until she unveils that she's actually a lawyer and has more game than anyone ever even realized. Honestly, I'm already annoyed thinking about that happening. Love y'all's podcast, by the way, the actual highlight of my week.
That makes me happy for Maddie.
Thank you, Maddie. Yes, congrats, D1. Keturah being a lawyer, I feel like being a lawyer this whole season, especially in the finale, was being talked about as if it were a superpower. Like if a lawyer makes it to the final 3, it's over. Well, guess what? Jake got 0 votes, all right? Being a lawyer doesn't help you that much.
We've had so much fun this season. We appreciate all of the love, like, and follows on our social media account, specifically TikTok. You guys are awesome followers.
We really did have a lot of fun. I thought this was a great season full of really entertaining people.
Yeah, the highs were high.
The highs were high. I feel like there were some great moments. Not a perfect season, but, you know, we can't have our hopes up. Nobody annoyed me this season.
That's not true.
Even Bruce.
No, you were annoyed by Bruce, Brandon,
Hannah. Brandon bugged me. Hannah. Yeah, we had some duds.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you liked this season, please consider giving us a 5-star review, and we will see you next season.